God of the universe, maker of the stars, who am I that you would know my name?
Welcome to episode number 66 of Life on Purpose. And
Here we are.
oops, Daniel, yeah, it's here we are, but we're not here. I mean, we're here, but the normal we as in four
Oh,
of us are
yes.
not here. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. And there's a reason for that. And that is that we'll explain that as we begin here. And that Ryan and David are going through a number of changes in their lives right now and are needing to not be on the program all the time. So we appreciate anybody's prayers for Ryan, for David, as they uh, go through these things. And we have decided me and Daniel decide, well, we're just going to continue to run this thing. So here we are. We've gone from four guys yakking to me and you, man.
Two. Yep. Father, son, yakking.
Father, son, yakking.
You know, my biggest concern
Yeah.
is that when I have a child that steps into the room, that it's going to be while I'm talking or while you're talking, and there's not going to be multiple people to kind of take over for that. And I'm just going to have to, because that happened a couple weeks ago. Like someone was talking and then in comes a child and I'm like, oh, hey. But no, and in all seriousness, yeah, we all go through seasons where we have to kind of assess what's in front of us. We were just talking about it the other week as far as the amount of oil that we have to delegate across all the things in our lives. And so this is a season that they are needing to take some of this oil and kind of spread it a little further. So we are definitely in our hearts and our prayers, and they'll still be around here and there, God willing.
Yeah.
So, but until then, here we go.
Until then, we're here, and that does not mean we're going to be on every single week. Daniel's got a full a lot on his plate with children walking in, and once in a while, my dog actually comes up and visits me. So that's about it.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Kaya once in a while will come in and just kind of stare at me like, "Who are you talking to?" But Daniel, you have been raised in this Hebraic roots, messianic, whatever we want to call it this week, and I really don't want to call it anything anymore. Pretty much all of your life. Okay, right?
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Do you have really any memories of like Easter and Easter eggs and all that kind of stuff?
I have two distinct memories pre-Torah.
Okay.
One of them is just a little Christmas tree decoration in a windowsill.
Okay.
I'm assuming that was probably in Florida, so I was maybe 4. And the
Yes.
other one is eating at what I'm assuming was probably like a Red Lobster, and we were eating lobster or crab. I'm not really, but probably lobster, being that the restaurant was named Red Lobster. And I remember like trying to look at this food and watching everyone do the cracking the shell or whatever, and I'm like, man, this is not worth the work that you got to put into it to eat this food. So those are my only two memories of a pre-Torah life.
Okay, well, I found out something new tonight, and on Shabbat, when your mom tunes into this, she'll find something new that we didn't know about. So, but how much time do you spend thinking about how countercultural you are? Do you spend any time? Have you thought through that thing a little bit?
Oh goodness. I do. I do think about that quite often, especially having kids, small kids. It's very easy to see all the distinctions in a lifestyle and the choices we make versus what is more common. So yeah, I would say I spend a decent amount of time thinking about counterculturalism.
And raising children, does it bother you that you're you're kind of the purple cat in the room most of the time?
It does not bother me. I love it. It's great.
Okay. Wow, I guess that nut didn't fall far from the tree, I guess. It
Yeah.
yeah, it just kind of rolled down a little bit, got stuck in a
Hmm.
in a
Yeah.
fork in the
Yeah.
tree somewhere and came forth.
Yeah.
So, our subject tonight. We're going to talk about Passover and going into these days as we will be in just a couple of weeks. This year, you're going to be doing a Passover with some friends at your house. I'm doing a Passover at our house with myself, your mom, and a number of the folks of Life Assembly. Um, you know, when you start talking about Passover with people outside of this community, outside of these people that are in this walk, they really they look at you like, What?" They really have no concept of anything. So have you run into this? And if you are out there with a lot of people that are really not in this walk. As
Hmm.
a contractor, where you're at, you have people that come from more of a Christian background, or from a secular background, or
Hmm.
whatever. How do you deal with the approach of all those things? Or you're wearing zeet around. It's like, what's that
Yeah.
macrame hanging from your belt?
Oh man, I kind of get the full spectrum, I would say. I know people personally that, like you said, are Christian, that I am in contact and communion with, and I use that word specifically,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, on a very regular basis. And they are, I would say, familiar with Passover. They've done one sometimes not as an observation of it, but just kind of as a practice.
Hmm.
I don't know if I'm saying that right, but just kind of to they would acknowledge the biblical importance of it. They maybe adopt some certain things of their own and make it their own, but not what you would call a traditional Passover. I would say. So there's that the people who are pretty familiar with it. Maybe they've done one or two. And then I actually run into a lot of people with my job, the people that I work for. Most of them second, third homes kind of thing in the
Hmm.
area that I work in, as you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of them come back and forth from Florida, and there's a pretty decent sized Jewish community there.
Yeah.
And so it's not uncommon at all for me to mention Tzitzit or Sukkot or kosher or Passover, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I got plenty of Jewish friends."
Hmm.
So there's that kind of in the middle, and then every once in a while, because it honestly doesn't come up that much with this last category. Every once in a while, I'll get someone that just doesn't understand, and usually it's kind of a passing thing. And so, as I'm sure you run into all the time, you just kind of quick explanation of what you do. I tend to um, I usually say, like, I don't do Easter, I do Passover, but I do that not as a full contradiction in that moment, but I'll
Hmm.
I'll kind of start with something that they know. Oh, like, yes, resurrection of the Messiah, something to give them a connection point at least.
Hmm.
So that's kind of usually what I run into.
Okay. Do you see that with people that are looking at you at your age, and you're working with a lot of people that are much older than you,
Yes.
as I think. Okay.
Hmm.
So do you see respect coming from them for what you're doing, and as you're explaining these things, uh, do you see that they're respecting you?
Yeah. Again, to just, and I have no idea where you're going with this, but I'm just
I
kind of
don't either.
rolling with
I'm
your
just
questions here.
yeah, I know. Yeah.
um, with the people who are very familiar with it, I get questions such as, "But, but, but you believe that Jesus fulfilled the law, right?" When I describe how I observe the commandments to the
Hmm.
best of my ability, and my quick response is, "Well, what do you mean by fulfilled?"
Okay. Yeah.
um, so with the people that are like relatively familiar with it, they have some Jewish friends.
Hmm.
I do see respect. There's at least kind of there's a connection point for them. So it's
Okay.
not new. It's something that they've probably already had some of these conversations, maybe in a less, because the Jewish population of America, you're just as likely, if not more likely, to encounter a secular Jew than a observant
Yeah.
Jew.
Yeah.
And so I have no idea what the observant level of the Jews that they would know would be.
Hmm.
So there's kind of a, I would say a just kind of a flat level respect, like not necessarily an admiration respect, but just kind of a, oh yeah, I can be with you on this. Let's be
Hmm.
friends. Let's have this conversation.
Hmm.
Um, and then you just like everyone has come in contact with, you have a quick conversation with someone, uh, and it's just a conversation, and you're just kind of throwing out little things to talk about, and then you leave and you never talk to the person again. So
Yeah.
I have personally not really encountered disrespectful people very much,
Hmm.
especially not when it comes to beliefs. Like I would have to think for a little while on if I have had any of those encounters.
Okay. Okay. Just some thoughts. I mean, maybe,
Yeah.
other people are kind of thinking the same thing of what is it like to be somebody in their late 20s now. Dig into that one a little bit. Somebody in the late 20s that's, so far out of the box. All right.
Hmm.
We are as a whole, you and I, and what we're involved in, we're not only countercultural within the context of the basic culture of, um people that are, going to church or whatever, or not going, or we're also counter it's kind of like being countercultural.
Hmm.
You've stepped out of everything,
On the
really.
fringe of the counterculture.
Yeah, yeah, you're kind of out there on the cutting edge of something, and wondering if that's the cutting edge or a diving board over sharks. You're not really sure, but so these are things that we deal with, and I think sometimes when we have the day of Easter and the day of Passover that are more coinciding on a calendar, the same as Hanukkah and Christmas, though those two have so much different meanings. Um, it's a little easier when they're close together. But like in this
Hmm.
month, it's or this year, it's like it's a month
That's
apart.
true. Yeah, it's kind of hard to make that connection. Um, I think just a thought I had while you were talking about that is because I think you're kind of going for points of commonality with people.
Mm,
And I think that though my convictions, if anything, have only gotten stronger over the years about what I do and about what I don't do, meaning I do Passover, I don't
mm,
do Easter, I
mm,
do Sukkot, I don't do Christmas. Though those lines have become more defined in my own life, simultaneously, I would say that I'm more uh, more likely, more drawn to use those things as a bridge for to connect with people, because in the end, this world is getting so insane, and the darkness is becoming so dark and so
mm,
strong that we can't afford to not find points of a bridge with any Christian, with any Jew. Like we can't afford to pass up those opportunities to to just have something in common, something to build a bridge with, because you know, point to one of any few big things in the Bible: Yeshua, Israel, the God of Jacob, the observance of Torah. Any one of those things is a very strong point to build something. You might not be building a skyscraper with someone, but maybe you'll build a sandcastle.
mm.
And I just feel like it's important these days to, um, like I said, even though I am more defined than I used to be, I'm more gracious and more willing to use the things that I don't do to connect with someone.
I had this opportunity just a couple days ago. I was playing golf, and one of the guys that I play golf with, um, he's a professor, was a professor, and very intelligent, one of the most intelligent men that I've ever met in my life. but he is totally atheist. And I think at least, you know, what he portrays as would be atheist, but I have a feeling that his atheism is based, though he would say it is, and I'm talking for somebody else, so that's kind of difficult, but he would say his atheism is, or is even a non-relevance of God, if there is one kind of thing, is based upon science, where I would say it was probably based upon his time growing up in a church that was irrelevant and very hurtful in his life. And we haven't got to that conversation yet. But we've, me and him have figured out this way. We don't agree on anything. Okay. We agree on nothing politically. He is as far left as I am right, and you know how far that is. He is as far non-biblical as I am biblical. But yet we figured out this relationship between us in which we're able to kind of bat things back and forth. And, we don't tell each other you're stupid, but there's times that, I know that he's thinking it.
Yeah.
We were talking about the eclipse the other day, and it was just really bothering me. After I watched the eclipse, I thought about this, of how many millions of people looked up in the sky and didn't see God.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I looked at the eclipse, and we could only see it a little bit here because of the cloud cover. All I saw was him. How tragic to look and see as Alex. No, it wasn't Alex. It was Philip at our congregation that mentioned that the sun is approximately 400 times farther away from the earth than the moon, and the moon is approximately 400 times, or the sun is 400 times larger than the moon, which is the only way you can have an eclipse. And to think that happen randomly,
Yeah.
and it just grieved me. And I was wondering, I'm hoping one of these days I get to talk to this friend of mine about this and ask him, because I have a feeling that as I was grieved that I knew he was looking up, because we were texting each other on something about this time. I was grieved that he was looking up and not seeing God. He was probably grieved that I was looking up and seeing God. I mean, that's how different we are, but somehow we have to figure out ways, as you were saying, to come together in something so that we can open up dialogue with each other.
Yeah. And one quick thing, and then I got a quick story that came to my mind. I was listening to an interview between a couple people, and one of them he was talking about how to establish relationship with your children. And he said, I encourage people so often to talk to their children about things that don't matter. Essentially just talking, learn to talk, learn to just talk about nothing. Because he compared it to, what do they do when you go to a hospital and something's wrong? They start the IV. They don't know what's wrong with you yet, but they're getting that vein open so that when they do know what's wrong, they can put the right thing in there. And so it's just like that with this communication. You're just opening a vein to where when something does click, when something is wrong, when some new knowledge has risen or been revealed, that vein is open and it can start getting into the blood. And I thought that was a great analogy. And I love what you're saying about the eclipse, because it's so true. And you're saying, you were mentioning some people are looking at it and not seeing God. And there are plenty of people who know God who were looking at the eclipse and thinking only of judgment and not the beauty of his handiwork, like you're talking about. It reminded me of a story. When I was turning 19, I remember this birthday very well because
ancient history here, folks.
Yes, a whole decade ago. I remember it very well, that birthday, because I was turning 19. 19 is the kind of the age when you become responsible for what you have learned in kind of Jewish thinking. And there was this lady that for some reason she was just like following what I was doing. You know, she knew of me through you.
Oh
She was
yeah.
looking at all my writings, and man, she was just like one of the most encouraging people that I never knew. You know,
Yeah.
um, and she sent me this huge box of gifts, and I mean, talk about just prophetic stuff.
Yeah.
Everywhere I looked in this huge box of just tons of different stuff,
Random stuff.
and
Yeah.
yeah, quote unquote random. Um, but one of the things was it was like a little kind of quote unquote pocket sized Torah with
Hmm.
the Hebrew on one side and the English on one side by Jewish Publication Society or something like JPS, I think it is.
Hmm.
Um, and man, at the time, you know, I was to say I was an overthinker would be a vast understatement. Um,
True.
and so I was looking at these things and I knew that God was working in my life and I knew that I was seeking his work in my life. And so that caused me to look, because of who I am, too deeply into things. So I was looking at this little this pocket Torah book and I'm like, "Oh man, why? What's the purpose of this? Like, you know, do I need this little travel size one because I'm going to be traveling more? Like, you know, is he trying to tell me that I need to focus on this more and all this kind of stuff?" And it wasn't until years later that it dawned on me. I was like, I don't know why I was thinking about it, but it just dawned on me. I remember seeing someone else have one of those.
Mm.
And I thought to myself, that's really cool. I would like that a lot. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks in that moment. He just wanted me to have it because I wanted it.
Wow.
Like he just wanted to give me that gift. And here I am, like trying to overthink the heck out of this thing and like look behind. I'm looking so far into it that I'm looking at it from every angle that I missed the most simple, plain one. And the reason I think this ties into the whole eclipse thing is just kind of that, where you're looking at all the possibilities of the prophecies and the this and the that, and you're trying to tie it into all the world events and just missing the fact that, man, this is amazing. This is an amazing event and thing that just happened in the heavens.
Yeah. It's funny because you talk about the beauty of it. Your mom was on the I was doing some yard work and your mom was on the deck above. I could hear her going, "Wow. Yeah, wow, look at that." And I'm like, "Okay, okay." And she was just enamored with the beauty of it, even with the all the cloud
Hmm.
cover and all those kind of things. And what you're talking about is what we discussed last week on the program that hit Ryan so much, and
Hmm.
then what we talked about on Shabbat of using your lamp oil. And so we
Hmm.
kind of turned that into a saying around our house is you're using your lamp oil. So um, and somebody did that on I saw this on a post. Okay, this was the evening of the eclipse. It was over. It's it's in the past and we're still alive. And somebody put a meme on Facebook. um Earthquake 4.8 on 4/8 was the eclipse. Exodus chapter 4 verse 8 says this. He put his hand back in his coat. No, wait a minute, that wouldn't have been it. Oh, it's oh, here it is. Yeah, so it's 7. If they won't believe you and heed the evidence of the first sign, they will be convinced by the second. Hmm. So how you put a 4.8 earthquake along with a or an eclipse on 4/8 and tie it to Exodus chapter 4 verse 8. I don't know. So I mean, people are doing stuff like that. It's to me it's kind of wild. Okay, so let me take us to where you guys have something to add to that.
No, just chuckling.
You you want to, but you're scared. Okay. Um, let me take you somewhere here. We're preparing for Passover. As with the eclipse, there were many people that looked to the eclipse and did not see God. will there also be a group that observe Passover but not see the Messiah? See, the eclipse was, the scripture says in Luke chapter 21, when you see these things happen, look up. We had a record number of people looking up. But as I was listening to the news broadcasts, it was just, I guess they may have just gone out and found all of the brainless people that they could. I don't know. But I mean, it's like, oh, it was spiritual. Well, what in the world does that mean? One person says, I felt as if I was connected with the universe. Well, if you want to be connected with the universe, connect with the creator of the universe. Okay.
Yeah.
It was just like these crazy statements that, me, to say it drives me crazy. You don't even have to start the car for that drive.
I have a question. Were
Okay.
you, I can't remember, were you here for the total eclipse 7 years ago?
No, I was on the road somewhere.
Okay, so let me branch in there because, and I think I can tie this into what you're saying.
Okay.
Um, I hope I can. So I was here for the total eclipse 7 years ago. It was right in the backyard here,
Mhm.
and this one that just happened for us was only about a 75%. Um, so I didn't. I had always wanted to see a solar eclipse, but in my mind, it was like, okay, yeah, the moon's going to come in the way of the sun, and it's going to get dark for a second, and then it'll be over.
Mhm.
I did not expect to for it to be a multi-sense
Mhm.
experience. And when I say multi-sense, I mean everything. So we were out there, we were watching it for a little while, and when it starts to get really close to it, it starts to get darker. It starts to get darker and darker. And then all of a sudden, like it gets so dark that the birds stop
Mhm.
chirping. The nighttime noises come. You start hearing the crickets and hear the frogs and all these kinds of things. And then like it happens and the moon crosses fully over. And I mean, some of us, like I remember Catesby actually was just like yelling, praise God.
Mhm.
I mean, I can't describe the feelings that were happening inside me as we were witnessing this. It was, and this is where we've talked about this before, where the enemy hijacks words. It was a spiritual experience, but for me, it was a connection with the creator of the universe.
Mhm.
It was something so profound, and it was a spiritual experience. As it just like, I mean, I heard stories of people who don't believe anything in God, and they were saying, "Ah, man, I saw that total eclipse, and I just felt like I should repent when it happened."
Wow.
Like, and so it's one
I
of
was
those
just mowing the
experiences
yard.
that,
Okay. That's all I was not doing anything spiritual. I was just mowing the yard.
but but it was really only with the total
Yeah.
eclipse that like that moment happened. And so I I just feel like it was one of those moments where it's so spiritual, it's so related to God and how he created the universe
Mhm.
that it it just happens naturally that there's that connection. And for people who know God, they know where it comes from, and people who don't know God, they have to ascribe it to just it was spiritual. It was my connection with the universe, man, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. So just to throw that in
Yeah.
there. I don't know if
I
that ties
just,
in,
I
but
mean,
just
I
interesting.
just, in my day, in my normal day, I see God everywhere. I see the
Yeah.
creator everywhere. No matter what I'm doing, I was driving along today, and I'm looking up and seeing the leaves green on the trees. It's
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
there he is. So, yeah, the eclipse, I enjoyed it. Looked up at it a few times, but this is something I kind of look at everything and I see him. Which brings us again back to Passover. Is it is it possible to go through Passover and 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 just not see him either?
Oh yeah.
I mean, what's the tragedy of that one? I've been to, I've been to Passovers. Your mom and I were talking about the first Passover we went to, and yeah, it was a very traditional Jewish Passover.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't remember there being a mention of Messiah. In, there maybe there've been, I don't know, but I don't remember that it was. I mean, for me, it was like the first time, first Passover was like, why are we telling this story about Egypt? Okay, I mean, I remember from scripture and from the Sunday school and all this stuff, but it wasn't relating to me. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's possible for us to, it's like looking up at an eclipse and not seeing God, not seeing our creator. We can also go through the time of Passover and not really see him either. It's just more of a kind of a story we're supposed to tell.
Mm-hmm.
How do we keep from doing that?
I think this is where, if you are not intentional with your observance or your pursuit of the Torah,
Mm,
it can become a rut, and you dig that rut deeper and deeper and deeper until all of a sudden you're doing the thing, but there's no sunshine reaching you because you can't see the eclipse because you're all the way down in this rut.
mm,
Um, but for some reason, and I'm sure, well, I'm not going to go into that because I don't know, but for some reason, our pursuit of the Torah, if we are not intentional with it, it just becomes this repetition. And all of a sudden, sometimes you can look up and being like, why do I do this? Why am I doing this thing? And that happens to me on a frequent basis where, well, maybe not frequent, on an occasional basis,
mm,
where maybe we're doing something for Friday night Shabbat, and I do something and I'm like, you know what? I don't know why I just did that.
mm,
I need to end, and I have two choices then. I can either keep doing it and just be, oh, whatever, why? It's just because I do it, I just do this thing. Or I can stop and say, let me dig into that and figure out why I do that. Because one
mm.
of two things is going to happen at that point. Either I'm going to find out that it doesn't mean anything to me and I don't want to continue doing it because it doesn't mean anything, or I'm going to say, wow, now I understand. I have a new revelation of this thing that I'm doing. And it means so much more to me now that I understand and now that I can apply it to my own life. And I'll never forget again. But it takes that moment of realization and acknowledgement that I don't know why I do this and I need to find out. But if you don't ask that question, if you don't stop, if you don't pause and ponder those things, then you're just going to be in a rut of, honestly, legalistic repetition.
Okay.
Potentially. I mean, we've talked about
Yeah.
doing it until you understand it. So I'll leave room for that. But, for
Yeah.
a
Through
more
doing, yeah,
advanced believer,
yeah,
we'll say.
yeah. Not a say Bani Shema. We will do and we will obey. Um, which is out of Deuteronomy. I think you might have just stumbled or walked across or tripped or something over a concept here. And it's a word. It comes back to a word you just said of intentional.
Mhm.
Are we intentional about our relationship with our creator? I mean, that's a question that every single person has to ask themselves.
Mhm.
Coming into Passover, I mean, what is the original Passover story of Egypt is that 6 million people or so, give or take, a million or something, uh, living in Egypt saw 10 plagues, including the death of all the firstborn, um, walked out of Egypt, had the sea parted, were given manna and water for 40 years. The shoes on their feet did not wear out. Their clothes did not wear out for 40 years. And out of that 6 million, give or take a million, two, two of them made it into the land of Canaan. Why? They were intentional. I want to speak for as the time we have. Maybe you can speak to this better, young to the young adults, to youth, about being intentional with your faith, not trying to piggyback on somebody else. Well, mom and dad, they're going to put together Passover. Grandma and grandpa, they're going to put together Passover, and I'm just going to show up, and you know, um, I'm going to go through the things that I'm told to do, and if I got to read a little bit, I'll kind of read through that, and if I'm asked to do something else, okay, but there's nothing. They're not, as we've talked about years. Some of the first of our shows, owning it, being intentional. That Passover is going to be what you put into it. I think about Dr. Monroe, Miles Monroe, sitting there in the Bahamas, with religion all around him, people in poverty, people, religious activity, but Dr. Monroe became intentional about his relationship. So is someone going into Passover this year just kind of thinking, well, whatever the leader of it does, that's fine, and then we'll eat enough matzah brittle until we all are ready to explode, and then we'll go home, and we'll have matzah pizzas for 7 days, and along the way we'll all be craving donuts, but then it'll be over, and I'll go to I'll go get a Whopper at Burger King or something. Is that all that there is to this? Or are we going to walk into this intentionally desiring to take our relationship with him to another level? Your thoughts?
I have two thoughts. The first one, the golden rule: do to others as you would have them do to you.
By the way, that's
Has
a
it ever-
golden rule. It's not a verse. You know that.
Yes. Has it ever occurred to us that that is how the Creator would like to have relationship as well?
Mhm.
We expect people to respect our time, or to be intentional with the gifts they give us, or respond to our messages, or the list goes on. And I would say that the Creator desires the same from us.
Mm.
So second thought: last year, as you know, we felt very strongly like we needed to host a Passover and lead it. And so I wrote my own Seder last year. And I've been doing Passovers, like we were, as we discussed earlier in this program, my whole life. All sorts, all different kinds. And there was nothing, no moment, no Passover, however good it was, that I have been to that could have possibly compared to what awoke inside me when I wrote my own.
Yeah.
And that was because I was intentional. I didn't want to just look up a bunch of Seders and pick the best parts that I liked about them and compile it. That thought crossed my mind, but I was like, I just don't feel right about that. I need to own it. And as I dug in, man, I learned so much. I learned that things that I thought were in the scripture were not. I learned that things that I didn't think were in the scripture were, and just all sorts of things. I learned all these things, and then I was able to take the story that God has given me and put it over the temple, or I was able to take the story of the Passover and apply it use it as a covering over the story that God has given me.
Mm-hmm.
And blend those two and produce this Seder that, I mean, it was amazing. I have never experienced anything like it. And again, to say that I've been to plenty of amazing Passovers, but there is just nothing that could compare with me writing my own, because it sank so deep in my heart, in my
Mhm.
soul, in my spirit. And I would encourage people, you still have some time, even if you're going to someone else's Seder, write your own. Like, just ask, like, how would I want to do a Passover? And just because it's going to make you spend time digging into, what does the scripture say about it? What is my place in this? And not to then take that and compare it to what you're going to go be a part of, but just to make it seep more deeply inside of you.
Mm. I agree. I mean, I wrote a Seder many years ago. I've taken various Seders and adapted them to my own.
Mhm.
As you know, at Life Assembly this past Shabbat, I didn't talk to you about this, but I read that section that you wrote,
Mhm.
and it didn't take you but a couple of words to figure out that it was yours I was writing.
Yeah.
Um, I guess this comes down to this thought regarding intentional. Are you going to, or are people going to come celebrating someone else's Passover or their Passover? Now, what do I mean? What do I mean by that? If all I do is tell the story of, and this is not to take anything away from telling the story of Egypt, because we're commanded to do so
Mhm.
in some way, tell the story of Egypt. But if I come just telling someone else's story, then it's just someone else's story.
Mhm.
But if we walk into Passover having intentionally desired to be a part of this season, this moment in time, Passover is not a day, actually. It's a moment in time. It's a few hours that is the time of Passover. We need to be willing and intentional about coming prepared to tell our story of Passover.
Mhm.
Telling our story of Passover to our children. When I was early on, this is before you, many years before you. Me and your mom were part of a couple different churches that had testimony time, and it was my favorite time of
Mhm.
the service. And it was usually on Sunday nights and Wednesday nights. And um, I remember in the Nazarene church, I could always count on CB Copshaw to stand up and testify. I always count on John Fowles and various others to stand up and give a testimony. At at the Assembly of God, I could count on Sister Florence from the Bahamas to stand up and, well, Pastor Brinkle, I just got to thank God tonight. And Papa Garbini, who's from Italy, had immigrated, and they would tell their story. So Passover is not just about telling someone else's story. Passover is about telling our story,
Mhm.
intentional about our relationship with our Creator.
Mhm.
Because, let's face it, if you're not intentional about something in these days, it's like most people I see today are like taking a sailboat, pulling the rudder out of it, and just kind of throwing it out of the lake, and drop it in the
Mhm.
center of the lake and see
Yeah,
where it goes.
that's true.
Wherever the wind's going, to, that's where I'm going. It doesn't matter if it's to a waterfall over a cliff. That's where we're going. Rocks on the beach. That's where we're going. Unless you're intentional in where you're going, you who knows where you're going to go. And
Mhm.
the same is true, should be true with our relationship with our Creator, is that we should be intentional about that relationship because we want to be going where He's going.
Yeah. I have a second here. You describing the being in the midst of, or just throwing it in the midst of the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh man, I don't know if I have it marked in here. It's the I was trying to see what the without vision people perish. Proverbs 29
Mm-hmm.
something. There's a few different there's a few different translations of it, and it's useful to look up the different translations on this one. But Proverbs 29 something, without vision, people perish.
Mm-hmm.
Without revelation, um, people cast off restraint.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of different
Mm-hmm.
versions of it. And what is that rudder? It's a restraint of some sort. It's a way to guide. And the way that we achieve that is through that intentionality, that um, doing things on purpose.
Yeah.
um,
So that's Proverbs 29, 18. Without a prophetic vision, the people throw off all restraint. So this verse
so
is
that's
quoted.
perfect.
Yeah, this verse is quoted. Without vision, the people perish. Da, da, da. And I've heard that quoted for all my life in churches. But it's interesting that that's only part A of the verse. So the whole verse is this: without a prophetic vision, the people throw off all restraint, but he who keeps the Torah is happy. So it
Mhm.
puts our obedience to Torah and his instructions to us will keep us from, that will keep us restrained. It
Mhm.
will keep us in that prophetic vision and keep us moving forward to where he wants us to be, where he's designed us to be.
Mhm. And that vision part, where I think I was trying to go, it's only slowly forming here, is that vision is it's future, but it's also past, because any vision that you have in the future will one day be in your past. Anything that you are moving toward,
Yeah, yeah,
with God and whatever, it's you're going to reach it, and it's going to be in your past. So it becomes the vision, the prophetic vision becomes your testimony.
yeah,
And in Revelation, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the power of their testimony.
yeah, yeah,
If you are not intentional enough to understand your testimony, even, then you have not yet really observed Passover. You have not yet really taken part in a Passover if you have not been able to identify that. And that's something we did last year. I texted everyone who was going to be a part of it, and I said, part of our Seder is going to be telling our stories of deliverance. What has God delivered us from? Just like he delivered the children of Israel from Egypt, and just like he has delivered all of us from our sin in Yeshua.
yeah,
What is that story of deliverance?
yeah,
And if nothing else, make sure you know the answer to that question. At least one answer. What has he delivered you from? From slavery into freedom. And
yeah.
then you can really enter into Passover in a new level.
I guess we could say that without being intentional, we'll never really have a testimony because we'll never be aware of it.
Yeah.
We'll never be aware of miracle. That something very tragic happened in Israel. To give our Israel moments here, this past week, um, a mutual friend of ours we've known for a number of years, their son, actually two sons and daughter, are in the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces. Both the two of the IDF units I've worked with extensively since October 7th, the war began. And one of the units that we've been working with very recently, her son is her and her husband, the two of them, their son is in Gaza, just went into Gaza, has been in there for, I guess, probably about 3 weeks, and had just come out of training and was in on the front lines there in Gaza. If anyone follows the news in Israel, and you should, you heard of 4 soldiers that were killed in Gaza this past week. The rest of the story is that the son of these friends of ours was in the middle of that. And when I say in the middle of that, I'm talking literal.
Mhm.
There were 5 soldiers that were going through some debris and things there in one of the towns of Gaza. As they were going through, terrorists popped up out of a tunnel. About 30 bullets were fired, and the 2 soldiers in front of this friend and the 2 soldiers behind were all killed. And this one soldier, this one IDF soldier, was not injured in any way. He said to his mom and dad, "It was a miracle. It is a miracle that I'm alive."
Mhm.
If you live long enough, you will understand it is a miracle that I'm still alive, because the things that happen in life, and that is our testimony. But when
Mhm.
we're intentional about finding and seeing, and then just being so thankful for the Creator in the midst of it all, of the things that passed over us
Hmm.
instead of affecting us, it just kind of makes you fall in love with Him more and more. Your
Yeah.
thoughts? Your final thoughts here?
No, you really touched on it there. He has saved us. He has given us a testimony, and as you said earlier, it's you can see it every day if you look hard enough, and you really don't have to look that hard. It's really just a matter of having your eyes open, and you can see every day his goodness and his
Yeah.
how he saves us every day, how he delivers us every day, and um, yeah, it's because he loves us.
There you
It's
go.
because he wants us, he desires us, he desires to spend time with us. He desires to be in communion bit with us, to take part in breaking that bread and drinking that wine together, us
Yeah.
and our creator.
There you go. There you go. I guess my words would be that in this Passover, as it's going to be celebrated, we will be celebrating in a couple of weeks now. As we come to Passover, make sure you do have a testimony.
Mhm.
If you can look back, if you can spend the next couple of weeks and think, wait a minute, I don't have a testimony. I don't have a time in which I received Him as my Messiah. I don't have a time in my life in which I know that I've been forgiven, and I know that I'm a part of His family. If you don't have that testimony, um, go to somebody you trust. If you don't have anybody you trust, then send us an email. Contact me, contact Daniel. Let us help you in that. Walk into Passover with a testimony of His grace and mercy, because you're going to find out that in doing so, that He has plans for you, plans for good and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Daniel, until next week.
Till next time.
See ya. Yeah, we don't know if it's going to be next week or not with the schedules and things, folks. Our commitment is to you guys, and to it would have been very easy for Daniel and I just say, yeah, well, I think that's time's over. But we decide not to do that, and so we're doing this for you guys, and your feedback is appreciated. Your
Mhm.
comments are appreciated. Sharing this is appreciated. helping to get the word out. If we're speaking to you, then maybe there's somebody else that it would speak to also, but we don't know them and you do. So be intentional about that. All right.
There you go.
See ya.